We've got a post here from icdark asking a few more questions about his flight, and he's given us also a video to look at. So one of his questions has to do with whether the eye gain is too high, and I thought I would try to take a look at that because assessing eye gain is a little hard to do except sort of by feel, but I hope that maybe I can make it a little more quantitative. So here is a portion of the video. I'll slow it down just a little where there's a turn. Isn't that nice? Isn't that beautiful? It's a very nice turn. And I've got this graph set up with the PID sum, the I term, and the P term basically is the only things I'm graphing. And one of the things that I notice here is that the moment when the turn ends, where's the moment when the turn ends? Let's see if we can sort of pick that out. So this is pretty much the moment when the stick returns to center. But the turn kind of ends roughly here, somewhere in there. Notice that as the turn is coming to an end, the I term is almost back at 0. Um, and if we look at just a normal sort of forward flight, what we'll see is that the I term is normally at 0 during normal forward flight. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find where the baseline is for the I term. And if you're looking at pitch, you may find that you have a positive I term during normal forward flight. Uh, but for roll, it's usually the case that the I term is pretty close to 0 during normal forward flight. So whatever that baseline value is, as we come out and finish the turn, this is roughly the moment, somewhere in here is where we finish the turn. Notice that the I term is basically back to 0. So the main way that high I term is going to mess you up is if I term is carrying over values past the end of a maneuver. You finish the turn and the I term is still pushing you out of the turn, trying to correct for error that is no longer relevant. Um, so just based on what I'm seeing here, it does not seem like you have excess I term on roll for sure. Because the way the I term has gone back to 0 by the end of the maneuver. Now let's see if we can find another maneuver. Okay, here is a big sloping, slow turn. And this is the perfect time for I term windup to happen if it's going to happen. Let's watch. Here's the end of the maneuver, more or less. You're back to 0. I term is still negative, but also notice that P term is going negative as well. So P term is responding to what's happening right this minute. And if both the P term and the I term agree that you need to be turning right, then I don't think the I term is causing a problem. It's when the I term disagrees with the P term. The P term says, right now we need to fly straight forward. And the I term says, I still want to turn left some more. That's when excess I term gets you in trouble. So here, although the maneuver has basically ended and the I term is pushing to the right, P term is also pushing to the right. So I don't think it's a problem. We'll back up and pick up again. Now, see, now the stick pushes left. Now, when the stick pushes left, P term says, turn left! Turn left right now! Here's the moment where that begins to happen. The P term goes positive. How long does it take before the I term comes to agree with the P term? And more importantly, how long does it take before the PID sum comes to agree? So at 22.5, the stick goes left and the P term goes positive. At 22.6, so 100 milliseconds, the PID sum goes positive, and somewhere in here, I mean, the P term then comes back to the axis. So the fact that the I term hasn't quite caught up yet, maybe not such a big deal. But by 22.9, so from 22.5 to 22.9, 4/10 of a second, basically maybe half a second, the I term is caught up again. So the I term seems pretty responsive in this situation, I guess is what I'm saying. It doesn't look like the I term is carrying over value past the end of a maneuver to the point where the copter feels like it's moving without being commanded to. So then the only question would be whether I term was too low, and that's something you can assess subjectively. If we just go back to the beginning of the video and play, Does this copter look like it's holding attitude, holding heading? Yeah, it sure does to me. So I think your eye is pretty good on roll. For pitch, there's a very simple test, in my opinion, for pitch, and that is you hover and then you do a hard punch out. And if it pitches forward or back, you probably want a little more eye on pitch. And then also you can hover at about maybe 20 meters and drop. And then at the bottom at maybe 10 meters or 5 meters, you jam the throttle really hard. And again, if it's probably going to destabilize a little because that's a pretty extreme maneuver. But if it mostly holds its attitude, P is pretty good on pitch. And if it destabilizes, it maybe needs to be a little higher. You asked about vibrations at 114 and 1 to 118 in the video. So let's see if we can go to that timestamp. Okay, and I'm going to put it at full speed here because vibrations are a little hard to assess if you're not at full speed. Yeah, I hear what you're talking about. I hear that. I can't tell if that's just an artifact of the wind on your mic or something, or if that's something your motors are doing. Um, 114 to 118. Let's try it again. I don't see anything in your video. There's just the tiniest bit of instability in your video. I do see it, almost like you're flying through some rough air. It almost makes me wonder if there was a little bit of wind or maybe even a thermal. Yeah, I bet if we look at your gyros, hang on, we would see that something. Who can see anything? It's so sort of clean and there's not a lot to see. Actually, the yaw, yeah. What about your motors? There's just nothing. It's really clean, honestly. Let's look at your motors. I don't see any like Pac-Man stuff in your motors. I mean, yeah. So I do see what you're talking about. I do see exactly what you're talking about there. I am not sure. Maybe we could look at your P values and see if there's something there. So when I look at your p-values for this time, I do see, and this is p, not d. Don't let the fact that this trace is yellow fool you. Just looking at p. Uh, I wonder if let's see, 2.5 is your p gain on yaw. That doesn't immediately strike me as excessive, but there is kind of a lot of jumping around on your yaw p, and I wonder if your yaw p is too high. I wonder if you've got too much oscillation on yaw P. I guess the question would be whether that's happening all the time or just during the period around 114. I don't know. Well, it's kind of happening all the time. It doesn't look particularly bad during 114, so I don't know. I do see what you're talking about. It's almost like that vibration is something external, and not, you know, I mean, I don't know, rough air or something came loose and is vibrating a little bit. But I definitely do see what you're talking about. That almost looks to me like noise. It's so subtle, but it almost looks to me like noise. But your gyros are really clean, so I'm not sure. And if we look at your D gains, well, the problem is the way LuxFloat represents the numbers internally relative to the way Blackbox scales them, the graphs are actually really tiny, and it's hard to tune LuxFloat with Blackbox because of the way the traces end up looking. You haven't got a lot going on with D. Your yaw D is only 5, so you're not having noise amplification because that number is basically non-existent. I'm sorry to say, I don't have any insight into what's making that vibration, so I'm going to have to leave you hanging on that one. Uh, that's a shame because that would really annoy me. it's a good thing that's not happening most of the time. No, I totally hear it now. I totally hear it in your camera. Here's my guess. I'm gonna make a guess. Something in your camera is loose. That's my guess. I don't think that's your copter doing that. I think it's your camera. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong, but that's the best guess I can make. So then finally, P and D levels is the last thing you asked about. So what I would like to do for that is I'd like to just um, pick an axis. We'll pick pitch since we haven't looked at it yet, and put P and D together. Oh, I got D is blue instead of yellow. I hate that. I gotta fix it. PIDD sub pitch. There we go. And I'm gonna look at the relative magnitude basically. And as you know, if I look here where they're moving, they are roughly the same magnitude with D a little bit smaller than P. So I feel like this is about right. This feels about right to me. Again, your flight performance will dictate. We can't just live on traces alone. But just based on what I'm seeing in the traces, these are roughly the same magnitude with D usually the same or a little bit smaller than P. And if we look at your gains, pitch D is 32. Yeah. It might be a little lower. That just depends on if you feel like that gives you good flight performance or not. Um, so, all right. Hope that's helpful. Bye bye.